It is evening now. The sun is folding itself away beyond the hills, leaving a warm golden hue that settles over quiet streets and soft rooftops. You imagine yourself walking along a cobblestone path, lined with flowers that sway ever so slightly in the gentle breeze. The air smells faintly of lavender and freshly baked bread from a nearby kitchen. Each step is unhurried. There's no need to rush. This is your time, a space where the world slows down for you. Inside, the rooms are softly lit. Lamps glow like old friends, casting warm pools of light on worn wooden tables and patterned rugs. A teapot hums on the stove, the promise of chamomile and honey waiting for you. The sound of the kettle blends with the distant hum of the evening, the quiet shuffle of pages turning, the crackle of a fireplace, and the occasional creak of an old floorboard. You sit in a deep, comfortable chair by the window. Outside, the first stars appear, shy and small, scattered across a deepening sky. You remember the times you've looked up at the stars before, perhaps as a child, lying on the cool grass, trying to count them before sleep carried you away. Those memories arrive like soft blankets, wrapping you in a gentle sense of belonging. There's an old story you once heard about a little village where every home had a lantern hung outside its door. On quiet nights, all the lanterns would glow together, making the village look as though it floated in a sea of starlight. Travelers would see it from far away and feel comfort, knowing they were nearing a place where warmth and kindness waited. You imagine walking there, your hands brushing against stone walls worn smooth by time, your footsteps matching the rhythm of a town that knows the art of taking life slowly. Somewhere, a cat curls up by the fire, its breathing steady and deep. A clock ticks faintly in the corner, not loud enough to disturb you, but steady enough to remind you that time is moving in its own quiet way. You feel no urgency, no pressure. Here, every moment stretches, soft and unhurried, like a ribbon unfurling in the air. Perhaps you think about mornings here, the gentle sunlight spilling into the kitchen, catching the steam rising from your cup of tea. The way the wooden floor feels cool under your feet until you slip on thick socks and wander to the porch. The air is fresh and smells of dew and wild herbs. Birds begin their soft conversations, and somewhere far away, a river moves with a patient, steady sound. There's another story, this one about an old painter who lived in a small coastal cottage. Each day he would set up his easel outside, painting the way the light touched the ocean. He never hurried, and he never painted the waves exactly the same way twice. When asked why, he would smile and say, "The sea never repeats itself, and neither should I." His home was filled with jars of brushes, the scent of oil paint, and windows always cracked open so the sea breeze could wander through. You picture this place now, the creak of the porch steps, the soft rumble of waves in the distance, and the feeling that the whole world could fit inside one small, happy space. You think of little things you could do to make life slower. Leaving a book open on the table so you can return to it any time. Placing a fresh sprig of rosemary in a small jar by the sink. Lighting a candle, not because the room is dark, but because the flicker feels alive. Listening to rain on the roof without feeling the need to do anything at all. Some evenings, you might imagine traveling, not in a hurry, but with the kind of journey where you stop often, explore small streets, and collect moments instead of souvenirs. Perhaps you find yourself in a small mountain town with houses that smell of wood smoke and pine, or in a meadow where wildflowers grow taller than your knees. These places become part of you, even if you only visit them in your mind. You notice that the rooms around you now seem even cozier. The sofa looks softer, the blanket heavier in the best way. You stretch your legs and feel the calm weight of the day settling into something gentle. The stories, the places, the images, they blend together like threads in a woven cloth. And as you listen, you can feel yourself being gently pulled toward a quiet and restful place. The room grows quieter now, as if it too is preparing to rest. You can almost hear the way the curtains move gently in the evening breeze, the soft fabric brushing against the window frame. A faint scent drifts in, something earthy perhaps, rain on distant fields, though the night is still dry. Somewhere in the background, there is a low hum of life, not loud, not distracting, perhaps the faint whir of a ceiling fan turning lazily above, or the occasional creak of an old floorboard. These sounds remind you of nights when the world felt safe and unchanging, when time itself seemed to slow and soften just for you. You picture a garden beyond the door. By day, it is full of herbs and flowers, bees visiting each bloom like tiny, gentle travelers. By night, the garden rests, silvered by moonlight. The shadows are longer, softer. The leaves sway in a rhythm that almost matches your own breathing. You imagine stepping out, barefoot, onto the cool grass, feeling the earth beneath you, steady and ancient. There's an old bench at the edge of the garden. Its wood is worn smooth from years of use, yet it holds itself steady, offering a quiet place to pause. Perhaps someone once sat there every evening, watching the sky turn from gold to violet until the stars begin their slow dance above. You take their place now, in your mind, and feel the comfort of a seat that has held so many quiet moments. A memory drifts in of an afternoon in a small cafe. You were sitting by the window, the cup in your hands warm, the air thick with the smell of fresh bread. Outside, the streets were calm, cobblestones damp from a morning rain. People walked slowly, stopping to greet each other, their laughter spilling softly into the air. You didn't know anyone there, and yet you felt a sense of belonging, as though this quiet life was already yours. It makes you think about how many gentle moments there are in the world that go unseen. A candle lit in a window across the street, the way someone arranges fresh flowers in a vase, the creak of a wooden gate as it swings open on a breeze. Each one is a story you might never hear, but you can still feel their warmth from afar. Somewhere in the countryside, there's a farmhouse at the edge of a field. Its roof is patched, but strong, its walls thick with the history of years gone by. Inside, shelves are lined with jars, jams and preserves that taste of summers past. The floors hold the echo of countless footsteps, some hurried, some slow. In the evenings, a single lamp glows in the kitchen, spilling light across a table marked with scratches from many meals shared. You imagine sitting there now, listening to the soft hiss of the kettle and the ticking of a clock on the wall. Perhaps you wander upstairs into a small bedroom. The bed is tucked neatly against the wall, its quilt a patchwork of faded colors, each square stitched by a careful hand. The air smells faintly of lavender and old books. Outside the window, crickets hum, a steady chorus that feels almost like a lullaby. The night stretches on, but there is no hurry for it to end. You think of mornings here, mist rising from the fields, the distant sound of a rooster calling to the day, the way the light catches in the glass jars on the kitchen shelves, the quiet clink of a spoon in a cup. Life moves here at the pace of the seasons, unhurried, content. Another story comes to mind of a tiny lakeside cabin where someone once lived alone for a summer. Each morning, they would walk to the dock with a cup of coffee, watching the mist lift from the water. Sometimes they would see a heron standing perfectly still at the shoreline, waiting for the right moment to move. Days were spent reading on the porch or picking wild berries from the bushes nearby. Nights were for listening to the soft lapping of water against the shore, the moon reflected in ripples that seemed to go on forever. It reminds you of how peaceful it feels to be near water, a stream, a pond, the ocean. The sound of it moving is always different, yet always familiar. Sometimes gentle, like a whisper. Sometimes steady, like a slow heartbeat. You can picture it now, carrying with it the stories of faraway places you might never see, but that somehow feel close all the same. The room you are in now is still, the air soft and easy to breathe. If there are any sounds, they are small and comforting, perhaps the rustle of fabric or the gentle shifting of the house as it settles. You realize that the longer you sit here, the more the edges of the day blur, until all that remains are the soft shapes and warm colors around you. Somewhere, in a distant part of the world, a candle is being lit in a small chapel on a hill. The light flickers against stone walls that have stood for centuries. Outside, the air smells of pine and cool earth. Inside, the silence is so deep it almost has weight. You imagine being there now, resting in that quiet, feeling the centuries of stillness gathered around you. There is another memory, perhaps one you have never truly lived, yet it feels like your own. You are sitting on the steps of a tiny seaside house, a blanket over your shoulders. The sun has just set, and the air is turning cool. Somewhere far out on the water, you hear the low call of a boat's horn. A few windows along the shore begin to glow with lamplight, each one a small story happening behind closed curtains. You do not need to know the details. It is enough to know they are there and that the world is gently moving forward, with or without you. The thought is comforting, that life carries on quietly, like a tide that rises and falls, whether or not you are watching. You imagine lying down now, closing your eyes and letting that quiet rhythm carry you. You find yourself imagining another place, far away, but familiar in spirit. It is a small inn at the edge of a forest, built long ago from stone and timber. The front door is painted a gentle green, and above it, a lantern sways lightly in the evening breeze. Inside, the air smells faintly of pine wood and something sweet, perhaps vanilla from a cake cooling on the counter. There are armchairs tucked into every corner, each with a blanket draped over the back, ready for anyone who wishes to stay a while. In the corner, a dog sleeps on a round woven mat, its breathing slow and peaceful. From the kitchen comes the sound of quiet conversation, low, friendly voices blending with the soft clink of cups and saucers. You take a seat near the window, where the last of the daylight filters through the glass, painting the room in shades of gold. The floor beneath your feet feels solid and grounding, and you feel safe here, as though this little inn is holding you gently in place. The forest beyond the inn is darkening now, but not in a way that feels unwelcoming. It is the kind of darkness that protects and shelters, that holds the soft sounds of night, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the quiet trickle of a hidden stream. You picture walking among the trees, your steps sinking into a soft bed of moss. The air is cool and fresh, and every breath feels as though it carries something old and wise into your lungs. And perhaps, as you walk, you come to a small clearing where fireflies drift lazily through the air. They glow and fade, glow and fade, each one moving in its own slow rhythm. You sit on a fallen log and watch them until you lose track of time, until the night feels endless and the world seems to have settled into a perfect balance. Somewhere else, far from this forest, there is a cottage by the edge of a meadow. The roof is steep and dark, with ivy climbing the walls, curling around the windows. Inside, the air is warm from a wood-burning stove, a pot of soup simmering slowly, filling the space with the scent of herbs and vegetables. On the table, a basket of fresh bread waits to be shared. Outside, the meadow sways in the wind, its tall grasses whispering softly to one another. You think about the people who might have lived here, generations before you, each leaving behind some small trace, a handmade shelf, a carved wooden spoon, a well-worn path from the porch to the garden gate. These traces remain, quiet and unassuming, yet full of meaning for anyone who takes the time to notice. Perhaps you recall another memory, a morning on a quiet balcony overlooking the sea. The waves are calm, curling gently toward the shore. The light is soft and pale, the kind of light that makes the air feel fresh and new. A single gull passes overhead, its wings catching the sun. Somewhere nearby, someone is hanging laundry on a line, the fabric lifting in the breeze. The moment is simple, but perfect in its simplicity. Time moves differently in moments like these. It is not measured by clocks or appointments, but by the slow shifting of light, by the rhythm of your own breathing, by the way your thoughts become fewer and lighter until they drift away altogether. Now you are walking along a quiet country lane. The air smells faintly of hay and wildflowers. On either side, stone walls mark the edges of fields, their surfaces warmed by the day's sun. You pass a wooden gate and see a small orchard beyond. Apple trees heavy with fruit, their branches swaying gently. Somewhere deeper in the orchard, you hear the sound of bees at work, unbothered by your presence. Further ahead, there is a little bridge over a slow-moving stream. You pause there, leaning on the wooden railing, watching the water move beneath you. Tiny ripples catch the light, breaking it into countless shifting patterns. You could stay here for hours, letting the gentle sound of water carry your thoughts far downstream. There is another place in your mind now, a tiny bookshop tucked into the corner of a quiet street. The bell above the door rings softly as you step inside. Shelves reach nearly to the ceiling, filled with books whose pages smell faintly of time. A small reading nook waits by the window, with a deep armchair and a lamp that gives off a warm, golden light. You choose a book without much thought, trusting that whatever you open will be exactly what you need. The shopkeeper nods to you from behind the counter, a knowing smile on their face, as though they have seen countless people wander in and find themselves exactly here. Outside, the street is hushed, the cobblestones damp from a light rain that has just passed. The whole scene feels like it belongs to another time, and you are content to linger here as long as you like. Somewhere far to the north, there is a small cabin in the snow. Smoke curls from the chimney into the crisp, still air. Inside, the windows glow with lamplight, and the fire crackles softly in the hearth. The world outside is quiet, every sound softened by a blanket of snow. You imagine sitting near the fire, your hands wrapped around a warm mug, the heat seeping into your fingers. The walls are lined with shelves of books and little mementos, seashells, postcards, photographs of places once visited. The snow outside falls in thick, slow flakes, each one drifting gently to the ground. Time seems to pause here, as though the cabin exists in its own peaceful world. You close your eyes and hear nothing but the fire, the soft sigh of the wind, and the gentle rhythm of your own breath. And in this quiet, you remember that there is always a place within you where such peace exists, a space untouched by the noise of the day, where you can return again and again, simply by allowing yourself to be still. Somewhere in the mountains, there is a village that never locks its doors. The people there say it has been this way for hundreds of years because the land itself protects them. They believe the wind carries away any ill intention, and the mountains echo only kindness back into the valley. The homes are built from stone pulled from the very hills that surround them, and the roofs are heavy with slate, each piece fitted carefully by hand. At night, the lights in the windows twinkle like the stars above, making it hard to tell where earth ends and sky begins. In the center of the village is a fountain that has been flowing for as long as anyone can remember. The water is clear and cold, and it tastes faintly of minerals from deep beneath the ground. Travelers who drink from it often speak of vivid dreams, dreams of green fields, warm fires, and voices they had never heard before, but somehow know. You imagine yourself there, cupping the water in your hands, feeling its chill against your skin, before sipping it slowly. Far to the south, there is a coastal path that winds along the edge of the cliffs. It is said that long ago, a sailor built the path for his wife, so she could walk there each evening and watch for his ship to return. She would carry a lantern, and he could see it from far out in the sea, a pinprick of light that told him home was waiting. Even now, locals say that on certain nights, when the mist rolls in from the sea, a soft light can be seen moving along the cliffs, as though she still walks there, keeping her promise. Closer to home, you think of the quiet joy of preparing a meal with no rush, no clock to follow. You picture slicing fresh bread, hearing the crisp crack of the crust. A pot of stew bubbles slowly on the stove, filling the air with the scent of rosemary, thyme, and garlic. You set the table with mismatched plates, each one holding its own history. A candle flickers in the center, and the meal feels like an occasion, even though it's just an ordinary evening. There's another story from a time when people believed the forest had its own guardian spirit. In the deepest part of the woods, there was a tree with a hollow trunk, and inside, it was said, lived the keeper of the forest. Travelers who were lost could find their way home by leaving a small offering there, a pine cone, a wildflower, a smooth stone. In return, the forest would guide them out, the trees parting just enough to reveal the right path. Child wandered too far into the woods, chasing a butterfly. As the sun began to set, the shadows grew long and the path disappeared. The child sat at the base of the hollow tree and placed a single feather inside. Moments later, a warm breeze stirred the leaves, and in the distance, the child heard the soft sound of their mother calling. They followed the sound, and soon they were home. You think, too, about stories that belong to the sea. Fishermen once told of a gentle giant who lived in the deepest waters, a creature who guided ships safely through storms. It would rise silently beneath the hull, lifting it over dangerous rocks and into calmer waters. The sailors never saw its face, but they would sometimes find a single large seashell on the deck in the morning, a token of safe passage. Some of these tales may be true, some may only be imagination, but they all feel like they belong to the quiet places in life, the places where you can rest, where you can believe in small good things without needing proof. In the present moment, you think of a rainy day spent indoors. The windows are streaked with water, the outside world blurred and softened. A wool blanket rests across your lap, and the gentle patter of rain becomes the background music to your thoughts. You have no reason to leave, no place to be, and the day stretches before you like a well-worn path. Perhaps you read a book of old legends, stories of rivers that sing, of mountains that hide treasures deep within their roots, of stars that fell to earth and became wildflowers. You turn each page slowly, letting the words settle in your mind like gentle ripples spreading across a pond. There is a tale from the far north of a night when the sky came alive with ribbons of green and gold, the northern lights dancing across the darkness. The people believed these lights were the spirits of those who had gone before, playing in the heavens. On clear winter nights, they would gather outside, wrapped in furs and thick scarves, watching the sky in silence. Children would try to wave at the lights, believing that if the lights moved more brightly in response, it meant their loved ones had seen them. And then there is the simple magic of waking before the rest of the world. The air is still, the light soft, the streets empty. You make a cup of tea and sit by the window, watching as the first hints of color touch the sky. It is a private hour, a gift meant only for you and the quiet. Somewhere in a desert, far away, there is a nomadic camp under a canopy of stars. A small fire burns at the center, and the night air is cool. A storyteller begins to speak, their voice carrying over the crackle of the flames. They tell of a great bird made of stardust who carries dreams in its wings and drops them into the minds of sleeping children. Those dreams, they say, are what inspire people to create, to love, to hope. When the fire burns low, the story ends, but the feeling of it lingers long into the night. Here, in this moment, you realize that you've been on a journey, moving through rooms, gardens, forests, oceans, and skies, without ever leaving your place of rest. The stories have become threads, weaving themselves into a single soft tapestry. And somewhere within that tapestry, you can feel the edges of sleep drawing closer, gentle and unhurried, waiting for you to simply step inside. In a far-off valley, there is a lake so still that on certain mornings it mirrors the mountains perfectly, as if another world rests just beneath the surface. The locals say that if you throw a pebble into the lake and watch the ripples fade, you can send a wish to the reflection below. If the reflection accepts it, the water will grow completely calm again within moments. Some say their wishes came true in small, surprising ways. A lost friend writing after many years, a letter arriving at the perfect time, or simply a day that felt lighter than the rest. You imagine yourself there now, standing at the edge, a pebble warm in your palm. You toss it gently, watching the rings spread outward, feeling a quiet connection to something both deep and timeless. Far away, on an island surrounded by warm turquoise water, there is an old lighthouse. It has stood through countless storms, its white walls weathered by salt and wind. The keeper's logbook is filled with short notes: sunset beautiful, wind from the east, storm passed safely, visitors brought bread. Each entry is brief, but together they tell the story of a life lived simply, in rhythm with the sea. At night, the light from the tower sweeps slowly across the waves, a steady pulse in the dark, a promise that someone is watching, keeping the path clear. Then you think of the seasons, each bringing its own quiet joys. In spring, there is the scent of blossoms carried on cool breezes, the soft hum of bees returning to their work. In summer, long evenings stretch lazily toward night, the air thick with the sound of crickets and the warmth of the day lingering on the skin. In autumn, leaves crunch underfoot, their colors like fire in the low sun. And in winter, the hush of snow turns even the busiest street into something still and gentle, the world wrapped in white. There's an old folk tale from the mountains about a woman who could weave dreams into cloth. People from all over would bring her stories, hopes for the future, memories they wished to keep, visions of places they longed to see. She would sit at her loom, the shuttle moving back and forth, the threads shimmering like moonlight. When she finished, she would hand them a scarf, a blanket, or a small square of fabric. Those who wore her work said their dreams felt closer, as if they could almost step inside them. Closer to reality, you remember evenings spent by a campfire. The logs crackle and shift, sending sparks upward into the night. The air smells of smoke and pine, and the warmth of the flames reaches your hands and face, while the rest of the world is cool. Conversations around the fire are always slower, softer, as though the light has its own way of calming voices. You stare into the embers, letting their quiet glow pull you into thought, until the line between dreaming and waking begins to blur. On the edge of a quiet harbor, there is a bakery that opens before dawn. The baker arrives while the streets are still empty, the sky a deep blue. The smell of fresh bread and pastries begins to drift through the air long before the first customers arrive. Inside, the ovens glow warmly, the counters dusted with flour. There is comfort in this kind of work, repetitive, steady, but filled with care. By the time the sun rises, the shelves are full, and the town begins to wake. You remember, too, a story told in an old fishing village of a hidden cove where the rocks are shaped like sleeping animals. Some say they are just the work of the waves and wind, but others believe they are the remains of ancient guardians who once protected the shore. The tide moves gently around them, as if still careful not to disturb their rest. And there is a simple truth you've seen in your own life. Some of the most peaceful moments come when doing nothing at all. Sitting in a chair and watching light move across a wall, listening to the faint hum of a kettle as it warms the water, hearing the rustle of leaves outside an open window. In these moments, the world feels whole, and you need nothing more. Somewhere far inland, there's a meadow filled with wild thyme and soft grasses. In the evenings, deer move quietly through the field, their shapes blending into the fading light. Beyond the meadow is a single dirt path leading to a small wooden bridge. It creaks underfoot, but holds steady, carrying you over a slow, clear stream. The air here feels untouched, the kind that makes you breathe more deeply without even realizing. And in another place, a small cottage stands at the edge of a cliff. It faces the sea, its windows always open to let the wind carry in the scent of salt. A woman lives there alone, tending a garden that somehow thrives despite the coastal air. She dries herbs in bundles that hang from the rafters, their scent filling the kitchen. At night, she lights a single candle and reads aloud to herself, the words mixing with the sound of waves below. You think about how stories, whether true or imagined, have a way of slowing the mind, pulling it toward a gentler pace. The details linger, the feel of a wool blanket, the weight of a worn mug, the sight of a lantern glowing in the distance. Each one feels like a step deeper into a place where the day has no demands. And here, in this moment, you've been traveling through valleys and harbors, mountains and meadows without ever leaving your seat. The images and stories are woven together now, forming something soft and steady, a background you can lean into. The edges of your thoughts begin to fade, replaced by a slow, even rhythm, like waves brushing ashore or wind moving through tall grass. The world, in all its stillness, waits patiently for you to rest. There is an old story told in a small fishing village by the northern sea. It is said that once, many years ago, a fisherman rescued a bird with wings of silver that had been caught in his net. The bird, unable to fly, stayed with him through the winter, singing soft, low notes in the quiet evenings. When spring came, the bird's feathers healed, and before flying away, it left behind one perfect silver feather. They say that if you hold it close to your heart at night, you will always dream of safe harbors and calm waters. The fisherman kept it by his bedside for the rest of his days, and he never once had a restless night again. Somewhere far away, in the rolling hills of Tuscany, there is a family that still bakes bread in a centuries-old stone oven. Every morning they wake before the sun, kneading the dough in silence, the only sounds being the soft hum of morning crickets and the gentle crackle of the fire being coaxed to life. The first loaves are always given to the elders of the village, as has been done for generations. It is said that the warmth of freshly baked bread is not just in the hands that make it, but in the hearts that give it away. In another tale from the deep forests of Japan, there is a legend of the night lantern fox. This fox, with fur like the color of moonlight, is said to appear only to travelers who are lost in the dark. Carrying a lantern between its teeth, it guides them down winding paths until they reach safety and then disappears without a trace. Villagers say that if you listen carefully in the woods at night, you may hear the faint tinkling of the lantern's handle in the breeze. On the quiet coast of Maine, there once lived an old sailor who never sailed again after a great storm took his ship. Instead, he built a little home on the bluff, painting it in soft shades of cream and blue, and filled it with seashells from all over the world. People from nearby towns would come to sit in his parlor, where he would tell stories of distant islands and rare birds, his voice steady and warm. Even those who had never been to sea said that somehow the way he spoke made them feel as though they had traveled across the world and back, and they always left with a sense of calm that lasted for days. There is a Greek myth of Selene, the moon goddess, who fell in love with a mortal shepherd named Endymion. Night after night, she would descend from the heavens to watch over him as he slept, bathing him in silver light. Zeus granted Endymion eternal sleep so that Selene could forever visit him without the touch of time. It is said that when the moonlight feels especially tender on your face at night, Selene is watching over you too. From the Highlands of Scotland comes the tale of a stone cottage by the edge of a loch. The story says that the house was built by two lovers who planted a tree beside it, promising never to leave until it touched the roof. Hundreds of years later, the cottage is gone, but the great oak still stands, sheltering travelers and whispering through its leaves. Some say if you sleep beneath its branches, you'll dream of those who once loved there, and you'll wake feeling as though you've been hugged by time itself. In the mountains of Peru, there's an elderly woman who tends a garden filled with flowers that bloom only at night. She believes the blossoms are listening to the stars. She speaks to them in Quechua, telling them about her day, her grandchildren, the stories her grandmother told her when she was a child. Sometimes she swears the flowers whisper back. And on nights when the moon is full, the whole garden smells like honey and vanilla. And in an old farmhouse in the French countryside, there is a chair by the window that is always warm, even in the coldest months. No one knows why. Some say it's because the chair remembers all the people who have sat there watching the fields over the years. The parents with their morning coffee, the children reading picture books, the grandparents dozing in the afternoon sun. Whatever the reason, it has become the most cherished seat in the house, the one where everyone feels instantly safe. Far to the east, in a small Himalayan village, there is a tradition of placing a smooth river stone beneath one's pillow for good dreams. The belief is that the stone carries the quiet of the river with it, and that its cool touch can draw away the heat of troubling thoughts. In the mornings, villagers return the stones to the water, letting them recharge in the current until the next night. On the shores of a quiet Norwegian fjord, a lighthouse keeper lived alone for 40 years. His only companion was the steady rhythm of the waves and the golden beam of the lighthouse sweeping across the dark water. On calm nights, he would hum songs into the wind, letting his voice drift over the fjord. Fishermen swore they could hear him miles away, and that his songs kept the storms at bay. And there's a quiet rumor in the old markets of Istanbul that somewhere, hidden behind a door with no sign, there's a tea house that only appears to those who truly need it. Inside, the air smells of cinnamon and cardamom, and a kind old man serves you tea without asking for payment. You sit there until your heart feels lighter, and when you step outside, the door has vanished, leaving only the sound of distant music. And in another quiet corner of the world, there is a little stone cottage perched at the edge of a salt marsh. The air there is soft with the scent of sea lavender, and in the evenings the tide creeps in so slowly you could almost believe time has stopped. The woman who lives in that cottage has a habit of setting out a single candle in her window each night, a tiny beacon that has for generations guided neighbors home across the winding paths. Local legend says the candlelight began long ago when a fisherman was lost in the fog, and his wife lit every candle she owned, hoping he might find his way. He did, and ever since the tradition has been kept, though now it's less about rescuing someone at sea and more about reminding people that there is always a place where they are welcome. There's another story told in the far north of a tree that stands alone on the edge of a frozen lake. The elders say it's the oldest pine in the forest, over 400 years old, and that if you stand beneath its branches in the deep silence of winter, you can hear it sing as the wind moves through its needles. Some claim the sound is a hymn for travelers. Others say it's the voices of those who once sheltered beneath it in snowstorms. No matter the truth, people still make quiet pilgrimages there just to feel the stillness and listen. Once, in a sleepy riverside town, there was a baker who began every morning before sunrise, not because he had to, but because he loved the sound of the river before the world woke up. He would roll out dough to the rhythm of the water's gentle lap against the dock, and by the time the sun rose, the air was filled with the smell of warm bread. Some mornings, he would place loaves in a basket and leave them on the benches by the river for anyone passing by. It wasn't charity, he'd say. It was an invitation to begin the day feeling cared for. In the mountains of Japan, there is an old tale of kitsune, the fox spirits, who on certain misty nights lead gentle travelers to hidden hot springs. Those who are kind to the foxes, the legend says, will find themselves in a place where the steam curls like silver threads in the moonlight, and the water feels warmer than any hearth. It is said you will never find these springs again unless the foxes choose to guide you. For many, the story isn't about the springs at all. It's about the idea that sometimes the most beautiful places in life are the ones we're not meant to keep, only to remember. Far away, in a Mediterranean village by the cliffs, there's a home with blue shutters and a garden so full of jasmine that even in winter the scent lingers. A man lives there who paints the sea every single day, never in quite the same way. Some days it's soft and pale, others wild and deep, but each painting is a reflection of the sea as it was that morning and of the painter's own heart. He gives them away to travelers who stop to talk with him, sending little pieces of his seaside home out into the world. And in the quiet fields of the English countryside, there is an ancient oak that shelters a small stone bench. It's been there so long that no one remembers who first placed it there. Some say it was meant for two lovers who could no longer meet in the open. Others think it was simply the work of a kind farmer who wanted a place to rest after the harvest. Either way, if you sit there at dusk, you might see the gentle flicker of fireflies weaving through the grass, and you may find that the worries you carried with you have quietly slipped away. Some nights, when the stars are particularly clear, people in a coastal fishing village tell the story of the lanternfish. Not a real fish, but a glow in the water that moves just beneath the surface, as though it's carrying its own little light. No one has ever caught one, but the elders say if you follow it out to sea and make a wish, the tides themselves will carry your hopes to the horizon. Under the quiet silver light of the moon, imagine the gentle rhythm of waves brushing against a shore of smooth pebbles, each stone warmed by the memory of the sun. Somewhere far away, An old lighthouse stands watch, its slow beam turning in a steady circle as if keeping time with your breathing. The smell of salt air lingers, mingling with the scent of driftwood, and you can almost hear the creak of a distant dock as it sways with the tide. Now let your mind wander inland to a valley where wild lavender grows in soft, endless rows. The air is cool, but carries the warmth of the day in its folds, wrapping you in a delicate fragrance. A shepherd walks slowly, his dog trailing beside him, the sound of their steps fading into the low hum of bees. Somewhere nearby, a brook sings its endless lullaby, tumbling over small stones polished by years of water's caress. Perhaps you remember, or perhaps you only dream, a wooden cabin deep in the mountains. In its window, a candle burns quietly, casting long golden shadows over shelves filled with books whose pages are feather light from years of turning. In one of those books lies an old folk tale of a silver bird that could only be seen in the last moments before dawn, carrying dreams from one sleeping heart to another. It was said that if you ever saw the bird, you would be blessed with the ability to wake with a smile, no matter the troubles of the day before. There's a place in the world, perhaps real, perhaps imagined, where the streets are paved with smooth river stones, and every doorstep is adorned with baskets of freshly picked flowers. The houses there are painted in gentle colors, and the air smells faintly of baked bread cooling on windowsills. At sunset, the entire town gathers in the square to light lanterns, and as they rise into the twilight sky, each carries a whispered wish to the stars. You might picture an orchard at dusk, where the grass glows faintly in the fading light, and the leaves rustle with secrets of the wind. Between the trees, a small table is set for tea, with porcelain cups painted in faded blues and golds. Steam curls from the spout of a teapot, carrying the scent of chamomile and honey. And somewhere far above, the first stars of the night begin to appear. In an ancient library, hidden deep within a city no map can find, tall shelves curve like the inside of a seashell. The books here do not hold words, but memories. When opened, they play out moments of forgotten lives, a child's laughter in a field, the sound of rain on a tin roof, the comfort of a friend's hand resting on yours. The library's keeper moves slowly down the aisles, dusting each spine as though tucking it into bed for the night. And maybe tonight your thoughts drift to a story told long ago about a tree that bloomed only once every 100 years. Its blossoms were made of silver, and its leaves whispered the names of everyone who had ever stood in its shade. People would travel for days just to see it, but only those who arrived by chance, without seeking it, would ever find it. Or perhaps your mind prefers simpler visions. A blanket warmed by the fire, a cup of warm milk in your hands, the steady sound of rain outside. The kind of moment where time seems to fold over itself, leaving you suspended between wakefulness and dreams, your thoughts floating like autumn leaves on a slow-moving river. Somewhere in the gentle hum of the world, there is always another scene waiting, a quiet garden, a mountain path, or riverside bench, each a place to rest, to breathe, and to let the edges of your thoughts blur into the stillness of the night. Let us drift now into another place, a hidden glade in the heart of an ancient forest. The trees here are older than memory, their trunks wide and gnarled, their roots twisted like the fingers of sleeping giants. Moss blankets the ground, soft and cool beneath bare feet, and high above, the canopy shimmers with threads of sunlight caught between the leaves. In the center of the glade stands a stone well, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. The water inside is said to reflect not only your face, but also the dream you are meant to dream tonight. Perhaps that dream will carry you to the edge of a desert at twilight, where the sand glows like gold and the air hums with the quiet music of cicadas. The wind shapes ripples across the dunes, as though an invisible artist is forever painting and erasing. On the horizon, a caravan moves slowly, its lantern swaying with the steady steps of camels. Somewhere among them is a storyteller whose tales can make even the moon lean closer to listen. From there, your thoughts may wander to a distant island ringed with black volcanic rock and beaches of pale powdered shells. The tide here moves in perfect rhythm, like a slow heartbeat, and in the tidal pools, tiny worlds bloom, corals, darting fish, and small shells that hum faintly if you listen closely. The locals tell of a legend that the island itself once floated freely across the sea, choosing where to rest according to the dreams of those who lived upon it. Or maybe your mind will choose something quieter, a small mountain village in winter, the houses tucked close together for warmth, their roofs piled high with snow. Smoke curls from chimneys, carrying the scent of pine, while inside someone stirs a pot of soup over a crackling fire. Outside, the snow falls in perfect silence, each flake turning lazily as if reluctant to land. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of bells drifts through the air, soft and steady, calling no one in particular. In another story, told by fishermen on misty mornings, there is a lake where the water is so still it seems made of glass. At dawn, the mist parts just enough to reveal the faint outline of a castle beneath its surface, complete with towers and bridges. They say it belongs to the spirits of the lake, caretakers of dreams, who rise only when the moon is full and the world is at its quietest. But not every wonder belongs to faraway lands. Some exist in small, almost hidden moments. The way light filters through sheer curtains in the early morning, scattering into soft patterns across the floor, or the way the last glow of sunset lingers just long enough to paint the clouds a shade of gold no painter can match. These are the kinds of moments that seem ordinary until you notice them, and then they feel like magic you almost missed. Picture, too, a great library of dreams where each dream is kept in a small glass bottle labeled with the date it was dreamt. The shelves stretch higher than the eye can see, and a gentle spiral staircase winds upward into the glow of lantern light. The caretaker moves quietly, carrying a feather duster in one hand and a small brass key in the other, unlocking dreams for those who need them most. And then there is the orchard of silver apples, a place told of in old countryside tales. They say the apples only grow when the moon is full, and if you eat one, you will dream of someone you have not yet met, but who will change your life in a gentle, unshakable way. The wind through the orchard sounds like the turning of pages in a book you have always meant to read. Perhaps tonight, as your breathing slows and the world grows softer, you will find yourself walking a narrow path that leads to an inn on the edge of a meadow. Its windows glow warmly, and the smell of bread baking drifts out to meet you. Inside, there's a fire in the hearth and a cat curled on a chair. The innkeeper nods to you as if you've been expected, and without a word shows you to a room with a bed piled high with quilts. Outside the window, the stars are so bright you could almost count them, but you won't. You'll let them count themselves as you drift toward sleep. Then let us wander onward, gently, as though we have all the time in the world. Imagine a narrow wooden bridge suspended over a gorge, not the frightening kind, but the kind that sways gently in the wind like a lullaby. Below, a river glides slowly between mossy rocks, its surface catching fragments of sky. The bridge leads to a hidden garden where night-blooming flowers open their petals in silence. Moonflowers, evening primrose, and pale jasmine, releasing a fragrance so soft it seems to hush every thought. Far beyond this, tucked between two rolling hills, there was a small stone chapel with no doors. Its windows are open to the air, and vines creep gently across its walls. Inside, the benches are worn smooth by years of visitors who came not to worship, but to rest in the stillness. Sometimes, when the wind moves just right, you can hear a faint, wordless hymn, not from any living voice, but from the stones themselves. And then, a place known only in a few fading folk tales, the Path of Lanterns. It appears only at certain times of the year, a dirt trail lit by hundreds of glowing paper lanterns, each one swaying slightly as if bowing in greeting. Some say if you walk the path to its end, you'll find a small pavilion overlooking a lake of stars. Not a reflection, but real stars scattered across the water. We might next picture the attic of a very old house, one forgotten by everyone except the dust motes and the soft smell of cedar. A single trunk sits in the corner, filled not with gold or jewels, but with letters written long ago. Their ink has faded to sepia, but the words still carry warmth. Hopes, dreams, and little observations about the weather, the garden, the way the moon looked on a particular night. It's the sort of treasure you can't spend, only cherish. In another story, a shepherd tells of the Meadow of Bells, a valley where wildflowers grow in the shape of tiny silver bells. Each time the wind passes through, they chime softly, as if the earth itself were playing a lullaby. It is said that those who sleep in the meadow wake feeling lighter, as though their dreams had been carefully folded and tucked into their hearts. And there are stranger places still, like the floating tea house, balanced atop a great lily pad in the center of a still pond. To reach it, one must cross stepping stones that rise out of the water as you approach. Inside, there is always a warm pot waiting, and the tea tastes different to every visitor, like the exact flavor of a happy memory. Sometimes the journey takes us to a coastal cliff, where the sea has carved great stone arches into the rock. At night, lanterns are hung inside these arches, and when the tide rolls in, the water carries their light far out into the waves. Fishermen say they are guiding beacons for dream sailors, travelers who drift across the ocean of sleep. And then a quieter vision. A farmhouse at the edge of a lavender field, the rows stretching endlessly into the distance. Bees hum lazily in the last light of day, and the air is heavy with the scent of blossoms. Inside the farmhouse, candles glow in glass jars, and the wooden floors creak in the way that tells you they've known many footsteps, many seasons, many nights like this. Finally, imagine an ancient library that keeps no books, only sounds. The soft patter of rain on leaves, the crackle of a hearth fire, the slow rhythm of oars dipping into a lake, the gentle turning of pages, the hush of snow falling in the dark. You can take one sound home with you if you like, bottled in a small vial to be opened on the nights you wish to sleep deeply. Somewhere, in a drawer that no one opens, lies a brass key with no door. If you hold it in your palm long enough, you might remember a place you've never been. The sound of waves against wooden stilts, the smell of oranges and old parchment, the light of a single lamp swaying gently. In the marketplace of the dreaming, stalls open only at night. One sells fresh clouds to hang above your bed. Another sells music boxes with melodies that change depending on the listener's heartbeat. Further down, there's a small stand where you can trade your worries for a jar of fireflies. They'll light your way home. You might pass an orchard where the apples grow with tiny constellations etched into their skin. Children pick them in autumn and line them up on windowsills so the stars can look inside the house. In the center of a quiet town, there's a clock tower whose hands move not by the hour, but by the scent of the air. When the wind carries cinnamon, it's morning. When it smells of lavender, it's night. And when it smells of rain, the clock simply stops. Somewhere else entirely, a tailor works on garments stitched from moonlight. They are meant to be worn only in dreams, and when you wake, they vanish, leaving only a faint shimmer on your skin. I once heard of a river where the fish glow faintly blue, as if carrying secrets in their scales. The people who live along its banks never fish them. They say the light is borrowed from the stars and must be returned. If you follow the path of wind chimes, each one hanging from an old oak along a narrow forest trail, you'll eventually reach a wooden chair that faces nothing but a great open sky. No one knows who placed it there, but everyone who sits in it finds themselves thinking of something they'd forgotten for years. A baker in a distant village makes bread that hums softly as it cools. They say it's because she needs it while telling it stories from her own life, and the loaves remember. Once, in a deep winter, a wandering musician froze in place while playing her violin. Not from cold, but because the note she struck had no end. It still drifts in the air somewhere, a single thread of sound stretched between centuries. And there is, I promise you, a place where snow falls upward. It is not cold there. The flakes rise past your face slowly, like they're returning to the clouds for another chance at being rain. Somewhere, there is a drawer no one opens. Inside, a brass key that fits no known door. If you rest it in your palm, its weight carries the scent of old wood, salt water, and a distant harbor you've never seen. The sound of slow waves blends into the murmur of a night market, one that opens only when the moon is high. Stalls glow with paper lanterns. A cloud seller shapes small bundles of white fluff for bedrooms far away, while a music box maker winds melodies that change with the listener's heartbeat. Farther down, jars of golden fireflies wait to guide someone home. A wind shifts. The air is suddenly scented with apples, each fruit marked by tiny constellations. Children carry them carefully to windowsills, letting the starlight peer inside. The scent changes, cinnamon on the breeze, and somewhere a clock tower moves its hands forward, marking the morning. But lavender drifts in next, turning the hands to night. And then rain. The clock stops entirely. In a narrow upstairs room, a tailor works with threads of moonlight. Their garments shimmer in the air and vanish upon waking, leaving only a pale dusting of silver along the dreamer's skin. That shimmer finds its way to a river where fish glow softly blue, like secrets pressed into scales. They are never caught. Their light belongs to the stars. Following a path of wind chimes, each one swaying from an ancient oak, the trail leads to a single wooden chair facing an endless sky. Someone has been here before. Their laughter drifts faintly in the air, blending with the smell of fresh bread. The baker nearby hums while shaping her loaves, each one remembering the story told to it as it rose. Somewhere beyond the bakery, the faintest violin note lingers, a sound that has been traveling for centuries without end, thin and silver as morning mist. It leads to a hillside where snow falls upward, drifting past your face and back into the waiting clouds. There is no cold here, only the slow, weightless pull of the sky. And when you follow the snow's ascent, it becomes white petals spinning down from a garden that blooms even in the dark. They land without sound on the surface of a lake so still you can see both the moon above and the moon beneath, perfect twins holding the same soft glow. Somewhere, a heron lifts from the water in slow motion, its wings barely moving as if the air itself is carrying it. You might walk along the shore here, the sand cool beneath your feet, until the lake becomes a path of polished stone and the sound of water becomes the rustle of silk. Imagine sitting at a kitchen table just before dawn. The kettle hums, and the window is open a crack, letting in air that smells faintly of rain. You wrap your hands around the cup, not to drink yet, but to feel the warmth sink into your palms. Outside, a sparrow hops along the fence, pausing now and then to tilt its head, as though listening to some faraway conversation. There's a certain stillness in early mornings that makes every sound seem like it's speaking only to you. The slow creak of the house settling, the faint clink of a spoon against porcelain, the sigh of a tree branch shifting its weight. They say in an old village by the sea, people once rose before the sun to leave gifts at their neighbors' doors: a crust of bread, a seashell, a folded scrap of paper with a kind word. No one knew who began it, but the practice lasted for generations. The quiet joy was never in receiving, but in imagining the moment when another soul found the offering. Now, picture walking along a narrow footpath through tall grass in summer. Your shoes dampen with dew, and each step releases the scent of wild mint. You're not walking to any particular place, only following the soft rhythm of your own breath. Somewhere, someone is baking bread in a clay oven. The smell is carried on the wind, mingling with the low hum of bees drifting lazily from flower to flower. The air itself feels golden, as though it might pour like honey from the sky. There's an old Japanese tale about a fisherman who caught a tiny, perfect boat in his net, carved from a single pearl. Inside was a letter written in an unknown hand, thanking him for returning the moon's reflection to the water. He never understood how they knew his name, but he kept the letter by his bedside for the rest of his life. You take a turn and find yourself in a shaded garden. Here, the air is cooler, and the light filters through leaves in patches like pieces of an old quilt. A stone bench waits beneath an archway of roses. You sit. You listen. Somewhere beyond the wall, the slow trickle of a fountain joins the faint laughter of children playing in the distance.
It begins with a knock at your door, just past midnight. 3 knocks, slow, heavy. When you open it, no one is there. Only a small envelope resting on the welcome mat, sealed with black wax, stamped with a spiral. You don't remember ever seeing that symbol before, yet it feels strangely familiar. Inside is a note written in cramped, almost frantic handwriting. The train arrives at 1:13. Do not speak to the conductor. And beneath it, a single train ticket. It makes no sense. There's no station in your town anymore. The tracks were torn up decades ago. But when the clock strikes 1 o'clock, something draws you outside. The streets are empty, the air cool and still. Then you hear a sound, a faint metallic screech, the rattle of wheels over rails, And when you turn the corner, you see them. Tracks that shouldn't exist, glinting in the moonlight, leading toward a station you've never seen before. The train is already there, waiting. Black carriages, windows glowing dimly from within. A single door stands open. You step inside. The corridor is lined with plush red carpet, the walls paneled in dark wood. You pass compartments where people sit perfectly still, eyes closed, faces serene. The air smells faintly of smoke and something sweeter, like burnt sugar. You find an empty compartment and sit. The train moves soundlessly, though the landscape outside flows by and jerks and flickers as if someone is flipping through different places. A forest of silver trees, a city floating in clouds, an endless hallway lined with mirrors. Eventually, the door to your compartment slides open. The conductor stands there. They wear a black uniform with no insignia. Their face is hidden behind a mask shaped like a bird's beak. Slowly, they extend their gloved hand toward you. In their palm lies another envelope, identical to the first. You remember the warning on the note. Do not speak to the conductor. You take the envelope without a word. The conductor lingers for a moment, tilting their head as if listening to something only they can hear. Then they leave. When you open the envelope, you find a single photograph inside. It's a picture of you, standing at the door to your home, holding a black wax-sealed envelope. The scenery outside the window changes again, and this time you realize it's not a landscape you recognize. It's the inside of your own house. The train is slowing down. It was one of those warm, golden evenings where the light feels like honey in the air. You were walking home along the old country path, the one that curves between hedgerows and dips down toward the river. Halfway down the path, you noticed something unusual. There was a gate. Not unusual in itself. There had always been gates here, opening into fields. But this one was different. The posts were carved with twisting patterns, like vines, and the wood looked impossibly smooth, as though it had been polished for centuries. And yet, you didn't remember it being here yesterday. It stood slightly ajar. Through the opening, you could see a garden. Not a wild, unkempt one, but a perfectly tended space, overflowing with flowers you didn't recognize. Their colors were so vivid they almost shimmered in the fading light. Deep blues, molten golds, and a kind of pale silver that seemed to glow faintly. A narrow stone path wound between the flower beds, leading toward a small, round table set with a single teacup. Steam curled lazily from it, though no one was there. Something about it felt inviting. You stepped through the gate. The air shifted, cooler, crisper, and carrying the faintest scent of jasmine. It was silent except for the distant sound of water trickling,
though you couldn't see a fountain anywhere. The teacup was filled with a pale green liquid. Beside it, on the table, was a folded note. In neat handwriting, it read, "Welcome back. You've been away for longer than you think." You sat down, the chair fitting you as though it had been waiting for you all this time. When you looked up, the garden seemed subtly different. The flowers leaned toward you, petals opening wider. Somewhere behind the hedges, you heard a soft chime, like glass bells in the wind. You didn't drink the tea, not yet, but you stayed. You stayed long enough for the shadows to lengthen and the colors of the flowers to shift, as though the garden had its own slow heartbeat. And when you finally stood and left through the gate, you turned back, only to find the gate gone, replaced by a solid stretch of hedge. It was late summer, and the fields were a soft gold, humming quietly with the sounds of grasshoppers and bees. You had been walking since morning, following no particular path, letting your feet take you where they wished. The air was warm, but not heavy, and the clouds above floated like distant ships sailing toward nowhere. By early afternoon, you came to a small road you didn't recognize. It curved lazily through the hills, lined with tall poplar trees, whose leaves trembled faintly in the breeze. The road looked as though few people used it. Grass grew in the middle, and the dirt was patterned with the footprints of deer and foxes. Something about it felt quiet in a way you couldn't explain. Not empty, just unhurried. You followed it until you reached a wooden signpost. The words carved into it had been worn down by years of sun and rain, but you could still make out a name you'd never heard before. Willowmere. The name felt pleasant in your mouth, like something from a story you might have read as a child. You continued down the road until, around a bend, you saw it. A tiny village, no more than a handful of cottages scattered near a wide stream. Smoke drifted from chimneys. The gardens were overflowing with flowers, hollyhocks, marigolds, roses. The air was rich with the scent of bread baking, and you could hear the faint splash of water from a wheel turning at a small mill. As you walked in, you noticed something strange. Everyone you passed smiled warmly, as though they had been expecting you. An old man with a cane tipped his hat. A child waved from behind a picket fence. Even the black cat curled on a doorstep opened one eye and gave you an approving look before settling back to sleep. Drawn by the smell of bread, you wandered toward a small stone building at the center of the village. Its sign read, "The Willowmere Bakery." Inside, a woman with silver hair stood behind the counter, her hands dusted with flour. Without asking your name, she smiled and said, "You've come at the right time, just pulled from the oven." She set a warm loaf in front of you, wrapped in a cloth that smelled faintly of lavender. You tried to pay her, but she shook her head. "Not here," she said gently. "Here, you take what you need, and you leave what you can." You sat at a little table near the window, breaking off pieces of bread while watching the village square. People moved slowly, without rush, as though time worked differently here.
And perhaps it did, because when you looked up, the sun seemed to have barely shifted, even though you'd been sitting for what felt like hours. Eventually, you left the bakery and wandered to the stream. The water was so clear you could see every pebble, and a wooden bridge arced gracefully across it. Halfway over, you stopped and looked down and saw something that made you blink. Your reflection was smiling back at you, but it wasn't exactly you. The clothes were different, older, more worn, and your hair was longer. The reflection seemed content, at peace, as though it belonged to someone who had lived here all their life. When you looked up again, the village was quiet. No voices, no laughter, no sound of the mill wheel turning. The air was still. You crossed the bridge and found yourself back on the road, the cottages now distant behind you. You turned to wave, but the village was gone. Only a stretch of golden field lay where it had been. In your hands, you still held the loaf of bread, warm, as though it had just come from the oven.
The rain had been falling since dawn, a soft, steady drizzle that blurred the edges of the world. You were traveling along the coast, the sea just visible through a haze of mist, when you saw a narrow path winding toward the cliffs. At its end stood a weathered building with pale blue shutters and a sign swinging gently in the wind. The Lantern House. It looked like an inn, though you couldn't remember ever seeing it on a map. Light glowed in its windows, warm against the grayness of the day. When you stepped inside, you were greeted by the scent of salt and wood smoke. The walls were paneled in old oak, polished smooth by decades of hands. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, and the room seemed to hum with quiet. Behind the counter stood a tall man in a wool sweater, his hair touched with silver. "Welcome," he said, as if you had been expected. "The kettle's on." You followed him to a table by the window, where you could watch the rain streak down the glass. He returned with a pot of tea and a plate of small lemon biscuits that looked as though they might melt on the tongue. The inn was mostly empty. Only a few guests sat scattered about, each quietly occupied. An elderly woman knitting, a young man writing in a leather-bound journal, a couple playing chess near the fire. No one seemed in a hurry to speak. The quiet was not awkward. It was the kind that wrapped around you like a blanket. After tea, the innkeeper handed you a key, its brass surface worn smooth. He said, "Room 6. It's a bit different." You found the room at the end of a short hallway. The door creaked open to reveal a space that felt like a secret. The bed was large, draped in heavy quilts stitched with patterns of ships and stars. A single lamp glowed beside it, casting soft golden light. But what caught your attention was the small door in the corner, much shorter than a normal one, with a round handle. When you turned the handle, it opened not into another room, but into a narrow passage lined with shelves.
On those shelves were dozens of glass jars, each filled with something curious: smooth stones, dried lavender, seashells, even scraps of parchment covered in tiny handwriting. At the far end of the passage, a round window looked out onto the sea. The rain had stopped, and the horizon was glowing faintly with the colors of evening. As you stood there, you realized something odd. The window was set far higher than your room should have been. You could see the whole curve of the bay, the lighthouse in the distance, and a single ship slowly sailing toward shore. You stayed at the Lantern House for 3 nights. Each evening, the jars in the hidden passage seemed to change, new ones appearing, old ones disappearing. The innkeeper never explained, and you never asked. Somehow, you felt that the mystery was part of the comfort. When you finally left, the mist had lifted, and the road felt different under your feet. You turned back once, wanting to take one last look at the inn, but the path to the cliffs was gone. Only the open coast remained, the waves quietly breaking against the rocks. In your bag, tucked between your clothes, was a single glass jar you didn't remember packing.
It was a late summer afternoon when you found the willow crossing. You had been walking for hours along a narrow country road, the kind lined with hedgerows, so tall they almost hid the sky. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of grass and distant rain. You might have kept going had you not noticed the wooden sign nailed to a leaning post at the edge of the road. It read simply, "Footpath to the old station." Something about the words tugged at you. You hadn't heard of any station nearby, and besides, the sign looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Curiosity got the better of you. You ducked under the arching hedgerow and followed the path. It wound gently downhill, the grass growing thicker and wilder as you walked. You passed blackberry brambles heavy with fruit, their dark skins shining in the sun. The sound of trickling water reached your ears before you saw it. A small brook crossed by a wooden footbridge, and beyond the bridge stood the station. It was small, barely larger than a cottage, with peeling cream paint and a roof patched in places with copper sheets. A long wooden bench ran the length of the platform, and a single clock ticked softly above it. The hands showed a time that didn't seem quite right. Neither the hour nor the minute matched what you knew it to be. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and machine oil. A ticket window stood at one end, its glass slightly clouded. Behind it sat a stack of unused tickets, their edges curling with age. Each was stamped with a destination you didn't recognize. Fallowmere, The Lanes, North Holland, Glassford-on-Sea. As you explored, you noticed something else. The faint hum of metal wheels on rails, distant but steady. You looked outside. The tracks ran straight into a tunnel just beyond the platform, but they disappeared entirely in the other direction,
fading into tall grass as if they had been abandoned long ago. You sat on the bench just to see what might happen. The air around you seemed to grow thicker, the light warmer, as though the sun had shifted lower in the sky. Then, from the tunnel, a shape emerged. Not a train you'd ever seen before. It was smaller, painted deep green, its sides lined with polished brass. The windows glowed faintly. It rolled to a stop, utterly silent, except for the gentle hiss of steam. The doors opened. Inside, you glimpsed velvet seats, dark wood paneling, and a single glass lantern swaying gently with the motion. No conductor stepped out. No passengers disembarked. After a long pause, the doors closed again, and the train glided forward without a sound, vanishing into the fields beyond the station. Fields where, only minutes before, there had been no tracks at all. When you finally left, the path back to the road felt shorter. The hedgerows seemed lighter, the air fresher. But later that night, as you emptied your pockets, you found something you hadn't picked up yourself. A small, worn train ticket, stamped with a single word: return. It was the kind of evening where the sky held the last light for far too long, a pale gold lingering over the horizon, as though the sun had forgotten how to set. You had been walking without a destination for some time. The narrow lane dipped and turned between fields where the grass swayed in lazy waves. Every so often, a dragonfly would flash in the fading light, then vanish again into the hedges. That's when you saw the gate. It wasn't much, just a tall wooden frame, painted white once, but now worn to a silvery gray. It stood not across the road, but slightly to the side, where the grass grew ankle-high. There was no fence attached to it, no wall to guard, just the gate with a small brass plaque fixed to the crossbar. It read, "Hawthorne Way, visitors welcome." The word stirred something in you, though you couldn't have said why. You stepped through. The grass gave way to a cobbled path, uneven but solid underfoot. It curved gently, leading between two great hawthorn trees that leaned toward each other like old friends. The air beneath their branches felt cooler, laced with the scent of green things and something faintly sweet, like honey. Beyond the trees, the path widened. Small houses appeared along either side. Not modern ones, but cottages built of warm stone, their roofs thatched and low. A few had window boxes overflowing with trailing flowers, and in one a cat watched you from the sill with patient eyes. It was quiet here. Not the silence of emptiness, but the kind that feels full, the kind that listens. You caught the distant sound of water, and sure enough, just beyond the next curve was a stream. A small stone bridge arched over it, the kind built long ago without rails or barriers, worn smooth by countless footsteps. On the far side of the bridge stood a building unlike the others, taller, narrower, with a clock face set high above the door. The clock was running, but you realized after a moment that the hands were moving just slightly faster than they should. The sign above the door read, "The Mapmaker's House." The door stood ajar. You hesitated, then stepped inside. It was dim,
lit by a single lamp hanging from the ceiling. Maps covered the walls, not just of countries or towns, but of places you had never heard of. One showed a valley filled with glowing rivers. Another depicted a forest where each tree bore a lantern. A third map was unfinished, its edges fading into blank paper, as though the place itself was still forming. At a large oak desk sat the map maker. His hair was gray, his waistcoat flecked with ink. Without looking up, he spoke. "You've come further than most." You asked him what he meant, but he only smiled faintly, dipping his pen into a pot of deep green ink. He said, "I chart the places between places, the roads you find when you're not looking, the paths that don't appear on ordinary maps, but which you can still walk if you listen for them." He set down his pen and finally looked at you. His eyes were the same color as the evening sky you'd left behind. He said, "You'll need this." He handed you a rolled parchment bound with a thin ribbon. When you stepped back outside, the gold light had faded to silver twilight. You turned to look at the mapmaker's house again, but there was nothing there, just the bridge and the slow sound of water beneath it. The gate was easy to find on your way back. You passed through, and the lane stretched ahead as though you never left it. Only later, when you opened the parchment, did you see what he'd given you. It was a map, but not of any place you recognized. Across the bottom, in careful handwriting, were 2 words: Hawthorne Way, return route. In the gentle folds of the countryside, where the mist rolls in each morning like a soft woolen blanket, there is a small lane that leads to nowhere, or so most believe. It's a narrow dirt path, framed on both sides by tall hedges that grow wild and thick, hiding whatever lies beyond. Locals pass it often, but few have ever walked it, and fewer still claim to have reached its end. One autumn evening, when the air carried the scent of wood smoke and apples, a woman named Eleanor decided to see for herself where the lane might lead. She was visiting from the city, staying at a rented stone cottage just over the hill, and her days had been filled with the quiet joy of being somewhere far from the rush of schedules. She set out just before dusk, the sky glowing faintly gold behind her, the first stars beginning to appear. The hedges seemed taller than she remembered seeing from the road, and the deeper she went, the more the air felt still. So still, in fact, that even the rustle of leaves from the breeze seemed to stop. She noticed there were no footprints in the dirt, no tire tracks, no sign of anyone having passed this way in some time. After what felt like half an hour, the lane opened suddenly into a clearing she could not have imagined. A great oak stood in the center, ancient and wide, its branches reaching so far they seemed to touch the edges of the clearing. Beneath it, a small stone bench sat, perfectly placed to look out over a pond. The water was so still, it mirrored the sky exactly, and when she leaned closer,
she realized she could see more than just the reflection of the clouds. She could see the image of a house, an old one, whitewashed with dark beams, ivy climbing up its walls. She looked up, but there was no house anywhere in sight, only the pond, the tree, and the bench. Eleanor sat down and watched, transfixed. In the reflection, the windows of the mysterious house were lit from within, and for a moment she thought she saw someone move past one of them. It was impossible to make out the figure, but it looked like a woman, dressed in a long gown, carrying a lantern. The figure paused, turned toward the window, as though looking straight at Eleanor, and then moved away, deeper into the unseen house. Eleanor felt no fear, only a strange sense of longing, as if she had been meant to find this place all along. She stayed until the first cool notes of night touched her skin, and when she finally rose to leave, she turned for one last glance. The pond was now just a pond. The reflection showed only the stars. She walked back up the lane in the dark, guided by the faint glow of the moon, and though she returned to the cottage many more times over the years, she never found the lane again.
There is a small coastal village that few know about, tucked away where the cliffs meet the endless expanse of the sea. It's the kind of place where time seems to slow, and the days stretch long with the sound of waves whispering against weathered stone. You arrive just as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of coral and lavender. The salty breeze carries the faint scent of seaweed and driftwood, and the air is cool but comforting. The village is quiet. Narrow cobblestone streets wind between cottages built of pale stone and wood, their windows glowing warmly against the approaching dusk. Fishing boats rest gently in the harbor, bobbing with the rhythm of the tide. At the heart of the village stands a lighthouse, tall and sturdy, its white paint chipped from years of storms. The keeper is an old man with eyes like the ocean, deep and thoughtful, who greets you without surprise, as though he has been expecting you. He offers you a simple meal of fresh bread, cheese, and a bowl of steaming clam chowder. As you eat, he tells stories of the sea, of ships lost to sudden fog, of starry nights when the water sparkles like the sky, and of a mysterious light that sometimes appears far out on the horizon, flickering like a distant candle. After the meal, he invites you to climb the spiral staircase of the lighthouse. Each step creaks softly beneath your feet until you reach the top, where the lantern room glows with a steady light. From there, you look out over the darkening sea. The waves stretch endlessly, gentle and hypnotic. Somewhere, far beyond the shore, a faint flicker appears, just as the keeper described, a light that dances on the water, moving slowly closer. You watch, breath held, as the light grows warmer and steadier. It casts a silver path across the waves, inviting you to follow. For a moment,
You wonder if you should, but as the night deepens, the light fades, swallowed once again by the vast, calm sea. You descend the lighthouse steps, the sound of the waves soothing in your ears. Outside, the village is wrapped in quiet and soft lantern glow. You find a bench by the harbor and sit to watch the stars blink awake in the clear night sky. The sea whispers secrets in a language you almost understand. And here, in this place between land and water, you feel an unexpected peace settle deep within you.
Nestled high among the gentle slopes of ancient mountains lies a village wrapped in mist and silence. The air is cool and fragrant with pine and wildflowers, and the sky often blushes pink with dawn before the sun rises fully. You arrive in the early morning, your footsteps soft against the cobblestone paths. The village is small, just a cluster of stone cottages with steep roofs designed to shed the snow that will come in the colder months. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, promising warmth inside. There is no rush here. People move slowly, greeting one another with quiet smiles and nods. Children play near a clear mountain stream, their laughter blending with the distant call of a woodpecker. At the center of the village is a small square with a well, its water rumored to have special properties. An old woman tends a stall nearby, offering herbal teas and honey collected from the surrounding forests. She tells you stories of stars that fall like fireflies, of ancient trees that listen and whisper, and of a hidden path that appears only when the moon is just right. Curious, you ask about the path. She smiles, eyes twinkling. It's a secret road for those who need to find their way when the world feels too loud. That evening, as twilight settles, you wander beyond the village edge where the forest begins. The trees stand tall and close, their branches weaving a canopy that filters the fading light into soft green shadows. Just as the woman had said, a narrow trail appears, a ribbon of earth lined with glowing mushrooms that pulse faintly in the dusk. The path twists gently, leading you deeper into the woods, where the air hums with the quiet magic of hidden things. At the trail's end is a clearing bathed in moonlight, where a circle of ancient stones stands silent. The air here feels alive with memory, as if the earth itself holds its breath. You sit among the stones, feeling the cool grass beneath you and the pulse of the night around you. The stars overhead seem brighter, closer. A soft breeze carries the scent of pine and something sweet, like wild honey and wood smoke. For a long time, you watch the sky, the quiet filling every corner of your mind, until sleep comes gently, wrapped in the calm of this secret place. As night deepens and the world grows quiet, there is a place that exists just beyond waking. A meadow bathed in moonlight, where time moves slowly and the air is soft with the scent of wildflowers.
You find yourself there without quite knowing how, standing among tall grasses that shimmer silver in the gentle breeze. The sky above is vast and clear, scattered with stars that seem to pulse ever so faintly, like the slow, steady beating of a heart. In the distance, a small pond reflects the night, its surface smooth as glass. Along its edge grow delicate flowers that glow softly, their petals unfolding like tiny lanterns. You walk slowly toward the water, each step quiet and unhurried. The meadow hums with the gentle music of crickets and the whisper of wind through the leaves. Near the pond's edge, you see a figure seated on a smooth stone. They wear a cloak woven from the night sky itself, stars sparkling across the fabric like scattered diamonds. The figure turns and smiles, their eyes kind and calm. They do not speak, but you understand. This is a guardian of the space between dreams and waking, a keeper of quiet moments. You sit beside them, feeling the peace settle deep inside you, as if all the worries of the day are folding away into the soft earth beneath you. Together, you watch the stars dance, the meadow breathing slowly with the rhythm of night. And as your eyelids grow heavy, the figure's gentle presence stays with you, a reminder that peace is always within reach, waiting quietly just beyond the edges of your thoughts. Thank you for sharing this journey. May your night be calm and your dreams soft.